Welcome, everyone, to Connecting with Karen Nance. I'm so excited today to have a very dear friend of mine, PeggySue Wells, welcome us to talk about her journey with her life and her kids and grandkids, and also her many books that she's written. She's just a fascinating person. Welcome, PeggySue.
Hey, Karen, I'm so excited to spend time talking with you.
And we lived close together and we didn't even know it for years. And now you're in Indianapolis and I'm in California. But luckily, thanks to social media and this Zoom call and StreamYard, we're able to connect. So tell us about yourself and let's get started.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so a little bit about me is the name PeggySue. I was named after the Buddy Holly song that most of you are not old enough to know, but that was where my name came from. I am the mom of 7 children, and I started my single mom journey when the youngest one was 1 year old. And so at the end of raising the children and as they got to where they were all launched, somebody came to me and said, you should put a book together about being a single mom. And I said, well, I don't know if I want to do that. And, there's just a lot involved. And they said, well, did you learn a few things? And I'm like, holy smokes. I learned a lot of stuff that didn't work. And I learned some stuff that does work. So decided that maybe it would be nice to put that book together. We called it The 10 Best Decisions That a Single Mom Can Make. And it's the most recent of my books. I'm an author full time, so I have 40 books of my own. I've probably collaborated on that many with other people. So I'm good with words, but don't ask me to do math.
I think that's a lot of us. That's definitely me. So can you tell us some highlights about your book? Some things that if someone's a newly single mom, where would she get started? How would she start?
So the point of the 10 best decisions that a single mom can make is that Pam, I co-authored this with Pam Farrell. Pam Farrell probably has 60 books out now, and she's a worldwide speaker. But Pam Farrell is the daughter of a single mom. I am the daughter of a single mom, but then I have been the single mom that is the parent. So we wanted to bring the two of us together so that we have both perspectives. We have the child's perspective and we have the parent's perspective. Mm-hmm. And then what we did is the book is highly positive because we just said, doesn't matter how you got here, this is how you are now. And so how can we come alongside you and help you and your children to completely succeed in life? So the book is crammed full of tips and practical helps, but it's all the stuff that works. And so you can go through it and you can pull the things out that are applicable to your family, and that then you can move forward in a way that you've got confidence and you've got courage and you've got a roadmap. And so you've got ideas of where to go. But the biggest thing we talked about was the 10 best decisions. And the reason that we did that is because single moms, when you look at them from, outside looking in and you're watching their lives and you're like, what is she thinking? Why did she decide to do that? What is she thinking? And the truth is single moms aren't thinking because they can't. It's physically impossible. And you've been a single mom for a portion of your life. And so the thing about being single mom is single is a relationship status. So it is an experience. It's not your identity. Parenting, though, you're a parent for the whole long haul. And so with this situation where you've got a very pivotal, very important relationship, and when it goes, kablooey, it goes in not the direction that you thought it would, our brains go into trauma mode. And trauma mode means we come back here to where we're going fight, flight, freeze, or please. So we're not thinking. The thinking part of our brain is in the front, but we've gone offline. And so now we're just reacting rather than responding, which works great if you're running from a bear because you don't want to stop and think, you just want to move. But what happens is moms go into trauma brain, and so do our children, because this is not the way life is supposed to go. It's not the way important relationships are supposed to go. And so while we're in trauma brain, we're reacting, we are not responding. And so it's very hard for a mom to make a good decision. And so that's why the book is the 10 best decisions, so that we talk with the mom about, let's start with decision number 1 and let's walk you through, because as you start making decisions, then your thinking part of your brain comes back online.
Wow. Are there some myths, and what are the myths and realities? I think you've shared with us the realities, but people have who are not in that situation,
Mhm.
right? Feel that they have some judgments or some predispositions about people that are single moms. There's not, I don't think the stigma, or there's not that focus on single dads, but more
Mm.
on single moms. And I think the burden and a lot of times the shame of that. So what are the myths behind the label of being a
Yeah.
single mom?
Sometimes, we have a lot of different myths depending on where we've come from and what's in our background. So I love to say, okay, you know what the myths are. You know what you already think about single moms. Let me tell you about the truth. Let me introduce you to who today's single mom is.
Right.
And single moms today, 1 in 4 homes is single mom led. And like you
Mhm.
said, there's more of an emphasis on the single moms. And that's because 80 to 85% of single parent homes are single mom led. There
Mhm.
are single dad homes, but there's just more single mom homes. And so it's 1 in 4 homes are single mom led. 50%, so 1 in 2 of all children in the US are expected to live in a single
Mhm.
parent home prior to reaching age 18. So you can't open a car door without running into someone who either knows or is a single mom, has single moms in their family. Also, 40% of those women are going to be 40 years old and over. Majority of them, three quarters of them, all have careers and they're supporting themselves with those careers. Very few of them, less than a fourth of them, are getting government support. And that's because they really just use it for a little while to get on their feet. And as soon as they can start supporting their children, then they let it go. The people that get any sort of child support, it's less than half. And the child support that they do get, the average is $6,000 per year, which
Wow.
we both know that doesn't even cover braces, let alone living expenses.
Right.
100% of all these moms really do wish that the cleaning fairy showed up once a week and made everything sparkling and left something simmering in the oven that's very delish. And 85% of our single parent families do not attend a church. And that's because they do feel very isolated. They feel very alone. They feel judged. They feel ashamed. And so they don't go to church based on that. In the past, too, in all fairness, the church hasn't known what to do with single moms. They don't want to endorse divorce and separation. So they've sort of like, we don't know what to do with you. And so there hasn't been a place where we fit. But I'm here to tell you, and all single moms will tell you, nobody endorses divorce and separation. It's not ever the goal. It was something that happened because it needed to happen. It was worse staying together than it was staying than to
Right.
be apart. But it's hard. Being a single mom is hard. And then also there's this myth around that single moms have children who are always in the principal's office. And the myth
Mhm.
that rolls out of that is that single moms are bad moms. We're not good at what we do. But the truth about that is the children's brains have also gone into trauma brain. They're offline. And the only way a child can express that is through behavior issues. And so when the
Yeah.
kids wind up down at the principal's office over and over again, I did meet one very, very smart principal who realized when those kids showed up, she's like, they're not bad kids. They're kids with a heartache. And she would work on them with their heartache and help them get through the heartache. And as they were able to process that, then they were able to come back online and start thinking. The other thing, though, that happens with trauma brain is that sometimes it's not just the one trauma of the relationship breaking up, but then the traumas keep happening. It happens because maybe there needs to be a relocation. The finances have totally changed. Maybe we need to go back and forth, from home to home, based on visitations. There's also other court things that come up. And so the traumas just keep coming and coming and coming. And so right about the time that mom or those kids are starting to start thinking again, then whammo, they're hit with another trauma that pushes it back. And so you can go through a lot of parts of your life being in trauma brain and not being able to really function well in life. So that's probably the biggest thing, that is probably the biggest problem that single moms come up against, is we are so traumatized, but we need someone to help us to start thinking again so that then we can start making some good decisions
Mhm.
when we most need to, which is when we have children at home.
Wow. So as you expressed, it's going to be hard to juggle, right? To juggle the kids, the job, the home, the other parent, they may or may not be visiting. So how does one get support? I know there are many ways, but what would be the first thing you would suggest in terms of getting help?
Yeah.
Identifying the issue is one, but two, how do I get support that I need to move forward in this relationship with my kids and the ex?
Well, and I didn't even realize that I was in trauma brain until after I had written the book, and I went and heard an expert talk about what trauma brain was. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's it. That's
Yeah.
why my brain was so fuzzy. That's why, and recently I went back over 4 boxes of books that I pulled in from the garage because I was looking for a particular document. And this was over those years that I had gone through single parenting and all the court things that went on and on and on, forever. And I'm pulling stuff out and I was like, gosh, I was just going through. I realized at the time I was just it's like a horse with blinders where you're just trying to move forward. And so as the stuff I'm looking at in the boxes, I'm like, gosh, I wasn't making good decisions. I didn't know how. A couple things that are super important for moms is I would highly recommend get into a good church. And if you go into a church and you get this hesitancy, that's not the right church, go find one. But find one where there's people that are compassionate, people that are going to come alongside you, people that are going to say, hey, the light's on, the door is open, there is a place for you, you belong, and we will be community around you. And women feel when they're the single moms, they feel like we are so isolated, but actually there's 15 million of us raising 22 million children. So we're not alone, but we're not sure like where to find our community. So I would say get into a church. Also, if it's like there's some antagonism that's going on, ask around, but then find yourself a super, super, super smart, super protective attorney. Someone who can field the ridiculous, questions and demands that come when I can't make a decision on this, so that you have someone who understands, yes, this is how we move forward. This is good for you. This is not good for the kids. So we're going to make sure that this doesn't happen. But you need an advocate in your corner because, again, we need to make good decisions. So I would start with those couple of places. There's also some groups for single parents. You can find some of those online, some of those in your community. But get with somebody else or somebody, if you can find somebody who's been through it. There was one gal that came alongside me. Her name was Sandra, and she had been a single mom of 5 kids. Her kids were all grown and on their own by the time her and I met. And I cannot tell you the times that I would talk to her and I would cry. And Sandra just knew how to understand and to listen. And then she would help me reframe something, reframe it into the better aspect, and to realize in every experience that we go through, there is something to learn. There is something that is for my good. There is something that is going to move us forward.
Wow. So in the book, do you also talk about resources online? So for example, if someone is unable because of not having childcare or a babysitter, and for whatever reason, maybe no transportation to get to a church or a support system, are there resources online someone could go to and find a buddy like Sandra like you had?
One thing that Pam and I did is that we didn't want the conversation to end when the book ends. And so there is a website that we put together called singlemomcircle.com. And so if you go there, you're going to find all kinds of resources, and you can kind of like self-sort where you want to be, because there's stuff about family and about finances and about fitness. And so you can go through it and you can get some support and some ideas. It's all free on that website. And then I think beyond that, it's almost a matter of asking around in your community, because for the most part, single moms have just dug our heels in and said, I got to get this done. I got to get to work. We got to get the food on the table. We got to help with the homework. We got to get the kids to school. And so there's been really a difficult time of coming together to say, hey, let's like support one another. A lot of times though, within your community, you'll find other single moms. I mean, again, you can go for a run through your neighborhood and just count every 4 homes. There's a single parent home there. And so as you get to know one another and you find people that, kind of parent with the same parenting ideas that you have, there was 3 or 4 of us that got together, and we would trade out services. So my friend Denise had asthma, so she couldn't paint. So we'd go paint a room at her house. But then she would always make food and bring us a meal, or she would coupon like crazy. I swear that woman would go into a store and they would pay her to take the groceries out. And so she would always help with the grocery shopping. And she was really good about finding where you could find groceries, where in the winter kids could get coats, where you could help with your electrical bill. Somebody called me at one point and was helping me find ways to get medical help for my children to get their, medical needs taken care of. So sometimes it just becomes a small community like that.
Wow, that's great. And it's networking also. That's really important. You have the resources, but it's important for you to take that next step to reach out and network. And you can do it online and you can do it in person. Like you said, just walk your neighborhood and you'll be able to find people. And I'm sure picking up and dropping off kids at school, you're going to meet other single moms as well as at events, school events, that type of thing. So it's just a question of people taking the time to look around in your busy, foggy mind, say, yeah, there's somebody out there that can help clear the fog. And you have another, I would call it suggestion for R's, right? Is it the 5 R's?
Yeah, the 5 R's. I wanted to also say there were some people that as I went through the worst that I went through, I had a couple friends that came alongside and said, we don't understand any of this. We don't, the whys and the hows of why the relationship has gone this way. However, we're going to walk with you every step of the way. And I'm so grateful for them. And they weren't all single. The people that I'm talking about that actually sort of came really close to me were not single. They were married couples, but they didn't treat me different. And they came alongside so that, like you said, there's those times where it's like, can somebody pick up my kid? Because, I've got one kid at the doctor's and the other kid needs to get out of school. Can somebody be there? And so it's really kind to be able to come alongside somebody and be able to help that. And then what I started noticing is my kids grew up and they kind of go off on their own. And then we come back together for holidays. There was kind of this, I don't know, there's kind of this weird feeling where it's like we're sort of emotionally abusing one another and then having pie. and I thought, I'm like, gosh, I grew up like that. I don't want to do this. And of course, my first impulse was, I look at the scripture that says, as far as possible, live at peace with everyone. And I'm like, I'm totally doing my part, Lord. It's got to be them. You got to work with them. And so as I'm talking to the Lord and praying about that, and your biggest tool in your toolbox is prayer, because God's always there and he's always listening. And he said, you know what? The one common denominator in all of your relationships is you. And I was like, oh, then I have some things to learn. So I'm like, will you please teach me? So I would highly recommend too, for single moms, find a mentor, somebody that's really smart, that is kind, and that when you meet with that person, you can unburden. Because when I meet with my mentor, and I've seen several counselors over the years, I've told my children I will pay for their counseling because I've given them plenty of material. But as I come away from meeting with the right counselors and the right mentors, my posture is better and the weight has gone off my shoulders, and they've helped me reframe what I was telling myself in my head so that it works a different way. So the message was, hey, guess what? You're the one common denominator in all your relationships. So I'm like, okay, teach me. And what I came to understand was what we call the 5 R's in our family. And the first R happens, I'll give you an example. My daughter, Hannah, she's number 6 out of the 7 kids. And as a teenager, one day she was here on a Saturday morning and she gets up and she's just grousing around the house. So I did the, mom mode where I jump in, I'm going to make her day better. So I told jokes and made tea and made her a pancake, and she sat at the table and pushed that pancake around on her plate, and the tea went cold, and she never laughed at my jokes. So in that moment, I went into the first R, which is I have poured out to you. I'm not getting the response back that I'm looking for. So therefore, I feel rejected. So rejection is the first R. And boy, feeling that rejection, and we can do it anywhere in our community and in our lives, but it doesn't feel good. We don't like it. So the next R that I moved into was resentment. I don't like that I feel rejected. I don't like that she rejected me. So in that moment, I made up a story in my head that she would rather be anywhere else on Saturday than home with me. And then it's because I stink as a mom. So that's the story I told myself in my head based on just what was happening. So then we did resistance. She's, pushing that pancake around, looking down at the table, but she's not looking at me. She's not talking to me. So I'm like, okay, fine. You're not going to talk to me. I'm not going to talk to you. You're not going to look at me. I'm not going to look at you. which is absurd looking at it from the outside. But if you've ever given or received the silent treatment, that's resistance. And we do it to each other throughout the community all the time. The next step, the next R is called revenge. And that's where I'm sitting here stewing in my little story in my head and my feelings of rejection. And I'm like, my heart hurts. So I want her to know that my heart is hurting. So for her to know that, I will do something that makes her heart hurt too. And then she'll understand. Again, from the outside looking in, it's absurd, but this is typical human behavior. So right as I was about to say, so are you keeping those grades above sea level? You know, got to be thinking about college. Right as that was about to come out of my mouth. And again, that's a stiletto that is meant to, it's a zing meant to hurt. She would have, of course, backpedaled. The kid would have been like, whoa, mom's on the warpath. I don't know why, but let's give her some space. And as she would have backpedaled away from me, I would have then gone into repeat because I would have once again felt rejected. She's moving away from me instead of toward me. That would have been rejection. So then I would have started right back through all the 5 R's all over again. And because God was showing me stuff, and because I've been working with a mentor, and because I'm trying to learn, right before I said the little stiletto about her grades, I went, oh, I'm going into revenge. This is going to hurt her. So instead, I got clear and I said, hey, the story I'm telling myself in my head right now is that I stink as a mom. You'd rather be anywhere else than home on Saturday morning with me. And she kind of like blinked, and looks up like she was coming back into reality. And she said, I just found out that the boy I babysit has leukemia. Right? It's like it had nothing to do with me whatsoever. But I jumped into that parade of the 5 R's based on an action, a behavior. Somebody says something, doesn't say something, does something, doesn't do something. And then we, make up a story in our head. And again, I'm the author of 40 books and people are like, yeah, I could never write stories like that. And I'm like, oh, yes, you can. You're making stories up in your head all the time. And you're really good with fiction stuff. So what happens is when I make that story up in my head, that becomes my reality. And then I treat you, I respond to you and act to you based on that story in my head that is not reality at all, but it's my reality. And so then we end up destroying relationships because of our behavior towards one another. So in the book, The 10 Best Decisions a Single Mom Can Make, there's a whole chapter on recognizing each of those 5 R's. Because I can promise you, you can, get off this podcast and you can go and you can start thinking about all your relationships and you're going to be, I'm in resistance with that one, resentment with that one, rejection with that one, I'm repeating with that one. We do this. It's just kind of how we live our lives unless we start recognizing it and catching it. And so in the book, it'll tell you for each of the 5 R's, what is the thing to undo that R? But the biggest thing I can tell you now, and this is the biggest thing to take away from the whole 5 R talk, is to stick to the facts. So had I that Saturday morning said, Hannah's grousing around the house today. Had I stuck to the facts, just that, and left it alone, there would have been no drama whatsoever. Drama happens when I take those facts and then I make up a story around it. And that becomes my reality, but it has nothing to do with reality. So I've learned to say people do what they do for their own reasons. It rarely has anything to do with me, because if I would have gone, oh, Hannah's grousing around the house and just left her to be, later on when she was ready to process verbally, she would have come to me and said, hey, gosh, Mom, I just found out about, this boy I babysit for. And so to have an understanding when somebody does something and you feel rejected, to go, you know what, we're all doing our best to live the lives that we can. We're all doing our best with what we have in our hands. And so half the time when I walk past you somewhere and I don't say hello, it's not because I'm shunning you or being a snob. It's because, gosh, my head is set on something and I'm just not even looking around me. When somebody pulls out in front of me in traffic, I don't get mad because I'm like, I know your brain is over there. You didn't do this on purpose. So it's kind of giving grace to others that we're all doing the best we can to live the life that we have. And for people like me that have been through a divorce, there are times where somebody on purpose did something to hurt me. And I understand that. And so what I've come to learn to do with that is to say, you know what, that's just them being them again. I can't take it personal. They're going to be unkind, but that's just them. They've got their own reasons again. That's them being them. and then just keep moving forward, because it does happen. But that way we don't carry it with us and we can let it go. But so with the 5 R's, as my kids have come to understand what the 5 R's are, I have 6 daughters, 1 son. So with the 6 daughters, I have these very strong, opinionated women in my family.
Like their mom.
Oh gosh. So like, have a wedding. If you want drama, I don't care who you are. If you want drama, have a wedding. If you want to have a wedding in my family, that'll do it. That'll bring in all the drama. So at one point, the youngest, as she was getting married, her sister, who was having the shower, says to me, "Hey mom, I'm putting together the place settings for where everybody's going to be at the shower. Is your friend coming? I haven't gotten an RSVP." And I'm like, "Well, I invited her. I called her twice. I haven't heard back. I don't know if she's coming." I mean, do you hear the stilettos? I mean, the story that was in my head at that moment.
Right.
So my daughter very wisely said, "So mom, what are the facts?" And it was like, "Oh, the facts." Well, the facts are, I invited her. I've called twice, haven't heard back. You know what? I'll call again. It changes everything. It takes the drama out of everything. So when you notice with yourself that the drama's moving up, your emotions are going up, it's like, go back to the facts. And when you go back to the facts, you just let the rest go and you move on with your life.
And you have a video for us regarding these 5 R's that'll help us kind of get it ingrained in our heads so that we can keep these in mind when we have just navigating life. So let's take a quick break and we can talk more after we see the video. Stay tuned.
1 in 4 homes is single mom led. And 50% of all of our children in the U.S. will live in a single parent home prior to reaching age 18. So it's really, like you count down your streets, count down the houses, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 in 4 is going to be led by a single mom. And 85% of those families are unchurched. They don't feel like they're welcome there. And yet being able to tell them about the Lord would be so spectacular. It's a good place for them to be.
And so as you began to really elaborate on this topic, what did you find to be some of the principles, and how did you put the material together?
Well, part of it is because I live it. 22 years ago was when I started my single mom journey. Of my 7 children, the youngest was 1 year old. And so, so that's when I started being a single mom. And so there's a lot to learn. And when I put together the 10 best decisions a single mom can make, I took all the things that work, and that's what's in the book. There's practical things about parenting and about getting into church and about teaching your children about the Lord and how to do Bible time. And the thing that happens with the single mom, you can look out at single moms sometimes and their kids, and you watch their behavior, and you're like, what are they thinking? What are they thinking? And here's the thing, they're not. And here's why. When you have most of the people that are single moms, they are originally they were in a committed relationship. They didn't anticipate doing this by themselves. And so when you have a breakup of that very critical relationship, you go into a shock, you go into a trauma. When you're in trauma, the front part of your brain goes offline. And so now you are in fight, flight, freeze, or please, which works great when you're running from a bear because you don't want to think about it. But for moms, we have to start thinking about how do we do the best thing for our children? How do we give them that consistent home? How do we get them, get their homework done? How do we teach them chores? We have so much, and then they have a broken heart too. And so what I wanted to do with this book was to say, let me show you how to get the thinking part of your brain back online so you can make good decisions when you most need to.
So the range of ages of your kids at the beginning of this journey 22 years ago, 1 was the youngest, and the oldest was?
She was 18.
So you're dealing with an infant all the way up through a teenager. Yes. Plus, you've got these negative factors, and like you said, just the emotional aspects of what you had gone and were continuing to go through. Right. So how were you able to really focus on not only walking in God's healing, but also the tasks at hand of raising a family by yourself?
That's a
huge question.
And the trauma and the upset doesn't end, because there's court situations, sometimes there's a relocation, sometimes you got to go get a job, sometimes there's those calls and there's the visits that go back and forth. And so there's a continual trauma that keeps happening. So to be able to start thinking is difficult. And what I did was I focused on what is the next right thing? What is the next right step? What is the next right decision? And I only sometimes knew just that next one. And my point was to always give my children a place of consistency. So much in their life had blown up. I wanted them to be able to go, but this always happens. Every night we do Bible time. We all do chores. We all eat healthy. We all take turns with this, that, and the other. And what were the 5 ways that we could treat each other nicely? So we had 5 rules. Don't lie. Don't call somebody a name. Don't push or hit. So we had just those basics. And so the kids knew this is it. It's small, it's basic. We can do this. And then pressing into the Lord. I will say churches don't know what to do with single moms, and they need to.
That was a great video. Can you walk us through it, PeggySue?
Yeah, again, those 5 R's, the first thing that happens when we step off into the 5R parade is we feel rejected. So I can either stick to the facts and not go onto that parade, or I can step into feeling rejected. And in feeling rejected, the first thing that we do is make up a story in our head. So when I feel the story, I can stop that R by going into what are the facts. When I'm in resentment, resentment is going to be coming out of my mouth. You'll hear it in my vocabulary because I'll say things like, well, he should, she needs to. Well, I'm not perfect, but. So when you hear that coming out of my mouth or anybody else's, we are in resentment. And so it's coming out of our mouth. And then resistance, when we're in resistance, that's where no eye contact. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to call you. I'm just, pushing you out. And so in order to fix that, it's where I need to come to you and make eye contact, and I need to engage with you and have a conversation and say something to you, send a text or whatever, and make it friendly. And also going back to the resentment, instead of going, I need to, she needs to, they should, all that drama, I have to flip that around and find something that I'm thankful for. So I had one situation where my kids were involved with this movie, this video that was going to show in front of our whole big church, our mega church. And I didn't know because I wanted it to be a surprise. But surprise, I wasn't going to be there because I was teaching a class. And so I heard about it right as I'm walking into the class. And I'm like, oh, I don't get to see it because nobody told me. So I couldn't make arrangements. And so there was that moment of feeling resentful about it. And so I could have carried that into the classroom. And so what I had to do instead was like, oh no, what am I grateful for? And I realized I'm grateful that my kids are involved in my church. I'm grateful that they did this video that everybody else is going to enjoy. I'm grateful that we worship together. So it was like, I flipped all of that. So that's what you do in resentment. Resistance again was to make contact. Revenge, boy, the thing you got to do with revenge is you need to give a gift. Be generous, give a gift, and give it to that person that you're feeling vengeful against, unless it's somebody that's not safe for you to go give that gift to. Then I need to find somewhere else to be giving and to be generous, because otherwise I become bitter. And so when you're feeling revengeful, then it's time to give. And then the repeat is all about just let people be who they are. If I release them from my expectations, like you're supposed to do this for me, or you're supposed to have said that, or you're supposed to have, whatever. If I release all that and just go, I'm just going to let you be who you are, then we don't get into the whole repeat thing. Expectations are an offense waiting to happen, and it's going to happen.
Wow. And so it's good that you have 7 reminders of your lessons to them, because they bounce them back to you, right, Mom? Like the wedding suggestion, the friend that you invited, and why didn't she respond? And so it's great that you have those in your family that keep you in check and you keep them in check, so that everybody is aware of the 5 R's. And I think that that's something that I'm going to incorporate into my family, because there's a lot of conflict, and especially younger people, they feel that older people, as my kids feel, that I don't know half as much as they do, but to give them these extra tools, they would love to share and say, Mom, you're repeating, Mom, you're doing this. And I need that. So just acknowledging that I'm not perfect, that I have a lot to learn still, It's just refreshing to hear it in such a simple way. We have 5 fingers. These are 5 things that I need to learn and practice the 5 R's. And so I so much appreciate those lessons. And so share with me your vision in terms of moving forward with the book is great, and the website. What's happening with the website, the Single Moms website now?
Yeah, the Single Mom Circle website is, again, just come. We've even put in there where I have friends that are children's authors, and so I've had them read their book out loud and videotape it, and that's uploaded onto that website under the kids section. So when mom comes home from work and she's like really tired and the kid's like wanting a lot of attention, rightfully so, but she's just really trying to get dinner on, she can open the computer, pull up one of those books that can be playing right next to her while she's making dinner. And then that child is listening to that story, and then they can talk about it together. But it's just things that we try to give gifts to these moms. So that is singlemomcircle.com. And then also you can get the 10 best decisions a single mom can make anywhere. It's at any of your favorite booksellers, from Barnes & Noble to Amazon to you name it, you can find it there. And you can also find it on my website. I always have my books available there. And so the website is PeggySueWells.com. And what we're trying to do with the Single Mom Circle book is to get it into the hands of all kinds of people that are single moms. And a church, one of the best things they can do, buy a case of these books. And as these moms come in and you realize she's a single mom, give her the book, say, tell us the areas where we can come alongside and help you, because single moms are not lazy. We are hard workers. But there are times that I could really use some advice, like, the sump pump in my basement is not working right, and I don't know what to do with it. And there's somebody there that does. Or I know when I first became a single mom, I was like, how do you pick medical insurance? How do you do car insurance? Like, what is this? And so somebody will be able to come alongside and help them. The other thing that churches and communities can do for our single moms is give really good childcare, a place where she knows she can drop her child off. That kid is going to be well cared for. That child is going to be loved. And in the case of a church, give her 1 hour to just sit and be fed and her batteries recharged, so that then she's ready to go forward again and keep doing all that she has in front of her. So this is a really good book for doctor's offices, for attorney offices. It's really good for schools. There's a lot of schools that will have single moms. They can hand those out to, because nobody planned to be a single mom. It's a shock. Nobody wanted to go here. And so we need to just help them make through that transition so that then they can move forward, them and their children, and succeed.
Well, I have the book, and I'm so thrilled that it's a handbook for me to have available, not just for myself, being a child of a single mom, and also being a single mom myself. I think that it helps people navigate who are in 2-parent households that were raised, and then they interact with the other half of us, right? The other 50%. And you get an insight into why, for example, my husband, his parents were married for over 60 something years. And so he's like, I don't get this, what are you talking about? So it helps us navigate and gives us a common ground. So he can see it through my eyes and say, okay, now I understand his experience. And so I think it's valuable for not only single moms, but all of us on this planet. So you've given us a gift, and continue to do so with your brilliant writing. Everyone has stories, but people can't write the way you do, PeggySue. So I'm just so thrilled. And I encourage people to LinkedIn, Facebook is the best way, and clearly the website. So I will have you back, and I'm so excited to give you some parting words. What would you like to leave our audience with today?
Yeah, parting words would be that I have had a lot of people come to me and say, I'm not a single parent, but the parenting tips in this book work. And so they've worked really well for us. I've also had some moms come to me and say, I'm a married mom, but I feel like I'm kind of single in the marriage, because depending on how involved the other parent is or how often they're around. And so they said, this was really helpful for me too. The other thing too is there's a whole chapter in there about dating with children, because dating with children is completely different than dating when we didn't have children.
Absolutely.
And so there's some really important things that you need to know, and those are in that book. And then also that we can give some grace to our children, because we have children that are going, according to the laws of how divorce works, they go back and forth from house to house, that the other parent to this parent. And we're kind of like, our kids have this hard time transitioning, and people talk about kids being resilient, but I'm here to tell you, we are kind of raising a generation that is has attachment disorder, because we're teaching them, don't get attached to that bed or that toothbrush or that bicycle, because next week you're going to be over here and you'll have a different bed and a different toothbrush. Oh, and the clothes over here you can't bring there because that parent says they have to stay here. And so then as our kids are growing up and we watch them get involved with relationships and sometimes have kids out of wedlock and they're not staying connected and they're like, what's going on? And I think we need to address this. I don't know what the answer is. I just know that this is a situation that is really hard on our children.
And keeping the conversation going and making people aware is huge. And you've clearly done that. And I really appreciate the fact that I never thought of it as, I thought of it as our book, you know, for single moms, but now it has such wider breadth, and the conversation needs to happen and people need to be aware. So you're such a blessing to share this with us and your wisdom, and 7 children, you've learned a lot and taught us a lot. So thank you so much. And I can't wait to have you back.
Thank you, Karen. Good to talk with you.
Have a great day. Okay.